Hello, everyone. How are you doing? My name is Brigitta Toruño. Welcome to Uno Soul's Chat. I am honored to be chatting today with Maria Rodriguez. She is an Uno Soul. She is the president and CEO of Vanguard Communications, which is a PR agency that she co-founded with a business partner when she was 27 years old. Their mission is to advance social change and champion causes to help protect the health and well-being of our planet and its people. She has been honing her skills at social marketing, media relations, multicultural and multiethnic outreach, and event production for more than 30 years. She is the daughter of Spanish immigrants, and I am proud to call her my friend. Welcome, Maria.
Gracias. Thank you. It's just so great to be here with you, Brigitta.
Thank you for being here. I'm honored that you're here. And how are you doing? How have you been doing?
I'm doing well. The weather has turned and it's gorgeous outside. Today's a beautiful day. So I'm doing very well. How about you?
Great. Yeah, I'm doing well for those same reasons. We are in September of 2023, and I'm thrilled that we're getting to chat as Hispanic Heritage Month begins for 2023.
Yes, that's exciting. I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to recognize and celebrate our culture every year in this country. It's really great.
That's right. I agree. And would you be able to tell us your story?
My story, well, I was, like you said, my parents immigrated to this country. Were both born in Spain, and they immigrated to Venezuela, actually, to Caracas, and they met and married there, and then they came here. And so I was born here, and my brother was born here. We were raised in a bicultural household. I didn't speak English until I had to go to school, and then I had to get a crash course for my kindergarten class in English. But just spent my whole life here in Washington, D.C., and spent a lot of summers visiting either Venezuela or España. But really my home and my family has been here. And I went to college here, so I really never did leave the Washington area. I went to George Washington University, and it was by chance, by accident, really, that I discovered what has become my career in communications and PR while I was at GW.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we want to hear about that, but I also want to touch on how we have such similar stories. We've talked about this before, but my parents met in this country, so I was born in this country, and then I didn't know any English because we only spoke Spanish at home, and I grew up in Alexandria, and I always say it was this Latino silo, right? My home, where inside of those walls we spoke Spanish, we ate Spanish food, Ecuadorian food. My mother was from Ecuador, my dad from Argentina, and my grandmother, my mom's mom, cooked. So Ecuadorian food, Latin music, it was just the silo. And I remember during that time, which was the 1960s, immigrants were assimilating, right? It's like, speak English. And my parents just did the opposite. They said, I don't care what you speak outside those doors, but in this house you speak Spanish. So they did me a tremendous favor, as did your parents.
Absolutely. I will say that my mother had to go along a little bit into the English place because, she was home when we got home from school, and my brother and I would be speaking in English. And
Yeah.
so she had a little harder time enforcing the rule. But my father, the minute he would walk in the door and anytime he was in the home, you had to be speaking Spanish. And I have to say, we weren't that thrilled about that rule at the time. But now I do feel like it's like a huge gift that they gave us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned your wonderful company, Vanguard Communications, 30 years. That's amazing and wonderful. And I would just love to hear a little bit about that story and also like the wonderful mission that you have in place for it.
Yeah, as I said, I discovered communications and PR by accident. I was pursuing a finance degree at GW, and I think in our culture, um, we get steered towards those careers that people see the most of, where the role models are. So it could be lawyers, doctors, engineers, bankers, that kind of thing. So that's why I was studying finance. And the person I was working, I always worked uh, since I can remember. And I was working in a nonprofit. And the person I was working for was the accountant and said, have you ever thought about PR? And it's because he knew the woman who ended up becoming my future business partner in Vanguard Communications. And
Ah,
he knew her. Her name's Diane McCachran, and she did their PR. And so he
mm,
said, you should meet Diane. And so I did. And she talked to me about what it was that she did, which at the time, the organization I was working for was a nonprofit working on environmental protection,
mm,
promoting solar energy and promoting renewable resources and taking care of our planet. And she was doing their PR, and she talked to me about that. And that sounded really fascinating to me. And she offered me an internship. And that's how
mm,
I ended up learning more about public relations and really just fell in love with the notion that you could really influence people, their behavior, their attitudes through communications. And I ended up trying to take a few classes at the last minute in my senior year in PR and journalism, and then went to work for her for a year.
mm.
And it wasn't until maybe 5 years later or so that we ended up starting our own firm together. So it was,
Ah,
yeah, I know, it was like serendipity, right? Like just it was amazing.
yeah.
And we were business partners for the first 14 years of Vanguard Communications. And then she decided she just didn't want to continue doing that.
Sure. Yeah. Wow, that's really cool. And I want to hear what we can talk about internships in a little bit too, because I know that's very important to you. And I also know, I mean, that's how you learned about this industry. And I think that internships play such an important role, and especially among diverse populations, to have that opportunity to have your eyes opened in different fields that you wouldn't necessarily have been around as a person that was younger in high school years and so forth.
Exactly. And I know you feel that way too. I know you work hard to talk to, diverse communities about what you do. And I know I do that too. And I think we do it because we know that we didn't have a lot of those role models in our lives when we were young. And so we didn't get to see all the opportunities that are out there in terms of the career path you might take. And so the more we can expose, here we are, like you said, Hispanic Heritage Month. I have to say, of course, I care a lot about the Latino community. And the more we can expose young Latinos and Latinas to different paths, different things, opportunity, show them that there's so much opportunity out there. I think that is, I don't know, it's very gratifying to be in a position where we can do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you've taken that and you have really leveled up the whole idea of offering internship opportunities. And I think this is a great moment. If you could please tell us about one of your initiatives.
Absolutely. Well, as I said, an internship changed my life. It opened up my world.
Mm.
And so I thought, we've always had interns at Vanguard Communications, of course. And the more I thought about it, when we were celebrating our 30th anniversary, I wanted to do something to give back to the community. And so we all talked about it at the firm. What could we do? And we ended up deciding that, why not start where it started for me, which was in an internship. And so we decided to develop a program called Comunicadores for the Future. So Communicators for the Future, Comunicadores for the Future, at GW, my alma mater.
Mm.
And the idea was to expose more students to communications and PR, because again, I didn't know what that was. And we work with a fabulous program at GW called the Cisneros Hispanic Leadership Institute. And so they support first generation Latino students at GW. And so the internships that we help facilitate are for those students. So the Comunicadores for the Future, when I thought about it, a lot of students can't find paid internships particularly in Washington, in the nonprofit sector. And that's the sector I care so much about. That's where we focus our work, is in the nonprofit and government sectors. And I thought, well, they can't find those opportunities because they have to work for free. And not everybody can work for free. And especially as a first generation student, it's less likely that you're in a position where your parents will support, you working for free. My parents didn't want me to work for free. When I did the internship, I had to find a way to do it because it was an unpaid internship, and I ended up getting credit for it through GW because they were not in favor of me. You work, you get paid. So we now fund this program where we provide 5 summer internships at 5 different nonprofits in the Washington area that would not normally pay for their interns. And they get exposed to communications, they get professional development training from Vanguard staff, they're assigned a mentor from Vanguard during the summer. And it's just my hope is that we expand diversity in the communications and PR field. I feel like it's my little baby step to do that. But also just to open up the eyes of some of these students who may not have ever heard about PR and communications.
Yeah, that's so wonderful, Maria. Maria, I'm just so proud of you, and you just have your heart in this work, and it's so great because it's so important about bringing up the next generations. So thank you for all of that work you're doing.
Of course, of course.
So, it's very clear that it's important for you to give back to the community, and I feel the same way. And that's kind of how we met, right? And we have a mutual good friend, Lydia Soto Harmon, who was running the Girl Scouts of the nation's capital and she had a program that she started called Encuentro de Chicas Latinas. And so I remember when she started the program, and maybe a year or two into it, she asked me to come in, and this was when she was doing it at some of the Girl Scout camps, and it wasn't at Marymount. And so my daughter and I would go, and we would do these workshops for the girls about, the possibilities, right? The possibility of pursuing your college education, the possibility of going after your dreams, the possibility of being a business owner. So we had it was nice. I felt so honored to be able to do that with my daughter too. Now and then eventually Lydia formalized the program even more, and even more students, Latinas from throughout the high schools in all of the DMV area started participating. And then Marymount became involved, and with our dear friend, Doctora Irma Becerra. And then I met some other beautiful ladies through us being on the panel for that. So I just feel very grateful to Lydia that I got to meet you through that. And how do you remember meeting Lydia?
It's a funny story. I was calling her. She was a reference for a executive search firm. I had never hired an executive search firm, and my longtime number two, my executive vice president retired after 20 some years.
Mm.
And it was a very important position to fill. And I decided that I really did need to work with a firm. And Lydia was one of the references for one of the firms I was interviewing. And when she got on the phone with me, she said, "How is it that there's a Latina in DC that I don't know?"
That sounds like her.
And she insisted that we have lunch, and so we did, and then as you said, I and you now too serve on the board of the Girl Scouts Nation's Capital, which is also a huge honor because I was not able to be a Girl Scout for my entire childhood, and it's another sort of, I think, classic immigrant story where my parents didn't know what Girl Scouting was, and they certainly weren't exposed to any kind of scouting in their childhoods. So that it would not have even been on their radar. But when I was in second grade, my best friend's mother, who was American and didn't speak a word of Spanish, decided that I should be allowed to be a brownie along with her daughter, because she was my best little friend. And she made it her business. She just decided, I am going to go talk to your mom about how it's okay for you to do this. And somehow, I don't even know how, but she convinced my mom to let me do it. And so I became a brownie, and I loved it. I loved the camaraderie with other girls. And but then at the end of that year, they moved away. And so it was the end of my Girl Scout experience, because
Yeah.
my parents didn't know what I needed to do to keep going. And of course, I was too little to figure that out. And so it ended. And so when Lydia asked me if I would be willing to be nominated for the board, it really was like a full circle moment for me, because I got to experience Girl Scouting now as an adult, many, many years later. So it's been a real pleasure. And then, of course,
Yeah.
I've gotten to meet such certainly amazing, inspiring girls like you have, but also amazing women like you, and some of the ones that you mentioned. It's been just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And again, a very similar story to you, except that you got to participate in brownies and I did not. Because again, the little girls in the neighborhood were going to these things, and some of them were overnight. And when I asked my mother about it, she was, absolutely not. I mean, the whole concept, the whole idea was so different than anything that she had ever heard of. So I wasn't allowed, and at some point I just stopped asking. But I mean, I do feel that it's very important, because it's about the mentorship and the socializing and the learning new skills, and really it's in leadership. It's really a beautiful program. I regret that I did not put my daughter in it. Uh, she never asked, and I'm not sure why. We lived in a very diverse part of Loudoun County in Sterling, so I don't know if it was enough cultural differences that not a lot of girls were doing it, perhaps. But it just I had never experienced it, so it wasn't like I thought, oh, I need to do this.
Right.
And I don't remember her mentioning it, or even my son mentioning Boy Scouts for that instance. Um, but it's like you said. I mean, now seeing young ladies that are going for their gold awards, and they're just brilliant, dedicated girls, that many of them having grown up through the whole program of Girl Scouts through high school. So it's a really good program that I do hope more Latinos and other immigrant groups will start to participate in it.
Yeah, and I think it's such a good point. I feel this way about a lot of things. That it's almost like it's legacy activities, right? Just like there's legacy enrollment at colleges and universities, right? I feel the same way about some of the opportunities, whether it's internships or it's scouting or some other, sports even. If you don't have someone in your family that can be a champion for you around that activity, it's going to be less likely that you will pursue the activity. And so unless someone tells you about it. So sports sometimes, my brother played sports almost from the beginning. Maybe that's a little easier because those teams start to get put together during recess and when they're really little and they're getting exposed to softball or basketball or whatever. But I do feel like I missed out on a lot of things because my parents either were afraid about what it was, since they didn't know, or they didn't understand enough English to be able to navigate what would be required for me to participate. So I really love that we're able to do Encuentro de Chicas Latinas every year. And hopefully we can do other things like that will, just open up, because the parents attend. That's the other nice thing, is we get a lot of parents that attend that Encuentro. And so I feel like even the parents, it probably gives them a lot of peace of mind to hear from other, Latina leaders to say, this is a good program. This is going to be helpful to your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunities and the network that it opens up for them is pretty priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about communication in the area of social change. And I know that it's important to all of us, but I love what you've done with your business and the mission. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, when I mentioned to you that I had met the woman who became my partner, and then I went my way, she went her way before we started our businesses. And I went to work for a PR firm here locally, and I was working on all kinds of projects. Some were mission-driven projects. I got to work on a breast cancer education program, on a high blood pressure education program, but some were corporate and more product specific, like selling a particular product through public relations. So, what we do in PR is try and generate visibility about a service or a product, I suppose, or an idea, whether it's through events, through brochures, posters, social media appearances, get someone on the Today Show, that kind of thing, on the radio. And I loved being able to put those skills to work on issues that were going to make a difference in a person's life or in the planet's life, in our environment. It just was so much more gratifying than doing the same to sell something, whatever that product would be, even things, that I love, it just wasn't as gratifying to sell shoes, let's say, over, you should really get screened for breast cancer. You should get your mammogram, that kind of thing. Like, you're saving lives through a lot of this. And
that's right.
And so that I don't know, I just felt so motivated by that. And so when Diane and I started Vanguard, we wanted to exclusively work only on issues we cared about. We feel, and I truly feel, like the power of communications and PR is so huge that I just don't want to put it to work towards things I don't believe in and care about. And so that's really what's at the foundation of it all, is let's put these skills to work in a way that are going to, help improve people's lives, communities, and the world.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing. I mean, not there aren't too many companies that do that. You really, really have to hone in on that and make that decision, right? That, because as a new business, sometimes you're tempted, right? Like, oh boy, not getting quite enough revenue this month. So, oh, this organization wants it. It's not quite the social cause that I'm interested in, but it still could be a client. But so that temptation is there, right? but
Oh,
to just be so truly focused and, this is what we're going to do. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. It's such a humanitarian endeavor that you've done. Yeah.
well, I will say you're absolutely right. The temptation is there. And it wasn't even just sometimes from like someone that you met that said, "Oh, can you help me promote my company or whatever?" It came from our staff even. There were times when a staff person would have been at a networking event and they met someone that, maybe worked for a company that really wasn't mission driven. And I would have to say no,
Yeah.
and so the temptation definitely was there. And I mean, when your own staff are saying, "Shouldn't we reconsider?" It's like, well, no,
Right. That's
that's not
right.
who we are. That's not
Yeah.
who we are, and we need to
Yeah.
stick to who we are.
Yeah. 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 That's wonderful. Um, well, I love quotes, and I found a couple, and I'll read them and just see what you think of them. This is President John F. Kennedy said, "Everywhere immigrants have enriched and strengthened the fabric of American life." So, I love that. And there's Senator Robert F. Kennedy said, "Our attitude towards immigration reflects our faith in the American ideal. We have always believed it possible for men and women who start at the bottom to rise as far as the talent and energy allow. Neither race nor place of birth should affect their chances."
Oh, that last one reminds me of my father,
Oh,
who, has been gone now for 10 years,
mhm.
this
I'm
year,
sorry.
actually.
Oh,
But it reminds me so much of him because he grew up in a village where there was no running water. My grandmother, even when I would go visit, built a fire on the ground and
mm,
made the meals over the open flame on the ground, right? So
mm,
no bathrooms, none of that, right?
yeah.
His dad died when he was a baby, so
Wow.
he had several, like 5 or 6 siblings, and they were divided up and sent to different aunts and uncles, plus the mom, because she couldn't possibly support that many children. And so he had a rough, in a way, a rough childhood, lots of love and beautiful environment and all that, but poor and not a lot of education. And the fact that he was able to end up, in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital, and ultimately moved to Bethesda, Maryland, which is a very nice suburb of Washington, D.C. It's remarkable based on where he started. And then that he could send his kids to college, that his kids would be successful in their endeavors. To me, it's what that quote is saying. Like, he went
Yeah.
as far as he could possibly go with, just his grit, like I
Yeah.
just think about that. Like, it was his grit that got him that far, and what contributions, he's really made to this country through all the work that he did, and then his kids now, and now his grandchildren.
Yeah.
His 4 grandchildren, my brother has 4 children, his 4 grandchildren went to Princeton.
Wow. See, what a
I remember
story.
when the first one got in, the oldest one, and my brother and I did not go to an Ivy League. And I remember when the first one, Anna, got into Princeton, that he cried.
Mm, yeah.
It was such an emotional thing that quickly, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you'd
Two
go from the
generations
dirt
down.
floor
Yeah.
to Princeton. And
Right.
that's really only in this country.
That's right. That's so true. That's so true. Yeah. That's beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I believe in the concept of nourishing your soul. Um, Nourishment can take lots of different forms, right? So I wonder, how do you nourish your soul?
I think in a zillion ways.
Good.
I mean, certainly, like I love live music and theater and spending time with family and friends and travel, and all of those things are very nourishing.
Mhm.
But I also think about, how do I do that every day? Because, you're
Mm,
not doing that every day. And I do
right.
think we need to nourish our souls every day. And so for me, my everyday nourishment comes from a daily walk. And
Mm.
it's usually early in the morning. And on a morning like today, it was spectacular. I had to wear a jacket and I
Yes.
love and you're just listening to the birds chirping, and it's still pretty quiet if you go early enough. And I
Mhm.
just I just love it. I love being outside. Even better if I'm walking by the water or I'm walking in a wooded area or the mountains. But
Yeah.
even just right here in my neighborhood
Yeah.
is wonderful every day.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that is so important. And that's one of my favorite things is to go walking and or walking in nature. I just feel like it renews me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm admiring the artwork that's behind you.
From
It
Mexico.
looks oh from Mexico. Yeah. It's stunning. The beautiful colors. Who's the artist?
I don't know.
Okay.
Aida, Aida and Matt.
Okay.
Aida and Matt, but we were in San Miguel de Allende in
Oh,
Mexico, and
one of
there
my
was
favorite places.
yes, and there was a beautiful art gallery. I think I told you about this art gallery. There was a beautiful art gallery there, and it's three of them, a set of three, and we originally were like, let's get one. Which one? And then we just loved them so much that my husband and I were like, oh, let's just get all three. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
yeah, I love them.
it's
And they
beautiful.
even though, they're from Mexico, but somehow they remind me of just our culture, like they
Yes.
remind me of, the carrying of the water jug. I used to have to go get water at my both grandmothers. There was no running water. So when I was there, my one grandmother, there was a fountain, a community fountain, and it came with spring water from the mountain. And that's where I would go get the water. With my dad's mom, they weren't quite as, their community wasn't quite as, I guess, they didn't have as many resources in his community. And so it was more of a community well. And you
Mm,
could go there and get the water. So it just,
right.
what I think of when I see that.
Nice. Very nice. Your own personal experiences, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you possibly leave us with some words of wisdom?
Sure. I would, now just reflecting back on my own career and life, I think that many times I was waiting for something to be done before living life, right? So
Mhm.
my word of wisdom is, live your life today and every day.
Mhm.
And I say it because I think just so often it's like, well, when I get through this project, when I get past this deadline, I'll be able to breathe. I'll be able to go do whatever it is I need to do. And I just think, life is happening with or without you. So I think it's important to just look for the ways to enjoy your life, even if it's in little ways, and not be waiting for that time somewhere in the future. If there's a hobby that you like that you want to pursue, or you're looking to take a class, oh, I'll do that, somewhere down the line. I feel like do it now. Figure out a way to do it now, even if it's in like a little micro dose. Maybe you can't take a week-long class in painting, but
Mhm.
you could do a YouTube class for an hour once a week or something, if that's something you love. So that's what I would say is just don't wait. Just try to live your life today.
That's perfect. That's perfect words, Maria. And I completely agree with that. Well, it has been wonderful to chat with you and to find out more about your story. It's a beautiful story and a beautiful journey, right? That we're all on, and
Yes.
each one of our stories is very personal and special, and I'm just so grateful to have gotten to know more about you and to share these moments during Hispanic Heritage Month.
Well, I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate you and our friendship. And I'd love that you do this podcast and that you're highlighting, these Uno souls from places, people all over, really, right? That you're talking with. I think that it's we all need inspiration in our lives, and you're bringing that to us through this. So thank you,
Oh,
and
thank you. Thank you for your
happy
kind words.
Hispanic Heritage Month to you.
Yeah, same to you. Well, and I honor the light in you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Ciao.
Thank you so much for listening to Uno Souls Chat. You can find us at www.unosouls.com and on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I would love to hear from you if you would like to chat with me. Have a beautiful week and see you at the next episode.